Okay, so let's talk about digital sovereignty. It's a phrase you hear thrown around all the time, from government halls to tech boardrooms. But what does it actually mean? How are countries trying to tame this wild, borderless digital world? Let's get into it.
Right. This question gets straight to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? Think about it. The internet is global. Data just zips across the planet in a split second. But our laws? They're built for a physical world, with clear borders and, frankly, a much slower pace. It's a huge mismatch, and it's got governments everywhere kind of scratching their heads.
And this mismatch, it creates what the source material here calls the sovereignty paradox. It's this fundamental clash between the old ways of thinking about power and the brand new reality of our digital lives.
I mean, look at this. On one side, you have traditional power, right? It's all about physical land, things you can touch, and slow, careful decision-making. And on the other side, you've got this digital world that is totally borderless, built on things you can't even see, like data and code, and it changes, well, constantly. So how on earth is the first one supposed to control the second?
So, does that mean the whole idea of sovereignty is just obsolete? Broken? Well, the sources we're looking at suggest something really interesting. Maybe we don't need to throw the whole concept out. Maybe we just need to think about it differently, like as a new kind of toolbox.
And here's that shift in perspective. It's really key. We tend to think of sovereignty as this fixed thing, like a fortress you have to defend. But what if it's not a status? What if it's actually a dynamic set of tools? The whole focus changes from what sovereignty is to what you can do with it.
Okay, so this whole toolbox idea sounds good in theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? Well, for a perfect example, we just have to look at the European Union. They have basically become masters at this, creating all these specific regulatory tools for the digital age.
And would you look at that toolbox? It's not one giant law to rule them all. No, it's a whole collection of specialized instruments. You've got the big ones, the DSA and the DMA, which target things like platform content and fair competition. Then you have the AI Act, which is pretty self-explanatory. Each one is a specific tool designed for a very specific, very complex job.
But here's the big catch. You can't build these high-tech tools for a super fast-moving world using old, slow, outdated methods. It just doesn't work. This means you need a completely new philosophy for how you even make laws in the first place.
So the old way of making laws is kind of like that waterfall model for software. You make a giant, rigid plan, you spend years building it, and you just hope it works when it finally comes out. The new way? It's agile, just like modern tech development. You work in short cycles, you get constant feedback, and you're always adapting. Basically, you stop treating law like some ancient monument and start treating it like software that needs regular updates to stay useful.
This cycle is everything. You develop a rule. Then you test it out with the actual companies and people it's going to affect. You gather feedback. You look at the data. You see what's working and what isn't, and then you revise it. It's this constant loop that lets regulation actually evolve and keep up with tech instead of being stuck 5 years in the past.
And the absolutely crucial point here is that regulators just can't do this alone in some ivory tower. This whole thing hinges on what's called a techno-legal methodology. It's a mashup of legal brains and the real-world practical knowledge you can only get from the tech experts who are actually building and running this stuff.
Now, this new, agile way of doing things doesn't just make better rules. It actually creates this fascinating new power structure for how control works in the digital world. The source we're looking at calls it the sovereignty cascade.
Here's how this cascade works. It's a flow of power top to bottom. First, you have a big body like the EU creating the main principles, the high-level rules. Then, the individual member states take those rules and adapt them for their own country. But, and this is the final critical step, it's the private companies, the big tech gatekeepers, who actually put these rules into practice in their everyday operations.
So what you should really take away from all this is pretty profound. Digital sovereignty isn't about governments trying to build some kind of digital Berlin Wall or control every single person online. It's about using old-school state power in a much smarter, more modern way. You regulate the key players, the intermediaries, and you let them handle the day-to-day enforcement. It's like they're not building a fortress, they're co-opting the architects.
It's a really clever, pragmatic solution for our borderless world, for sure. But it leaves us with this one massive question for the future. By outsourcing all the nitty-gritty enforcement to these private gatekeepers, are we actually reclaiming control, or are we just shifting power around? That's definitely something to chew on as we all keep living more and more of our lives online.